Imagine the most ceremonial banquet at Buckingham Palace. Hundreds of candles in silver candelabra, porcelain that remembers Napoleon, and footmen whose movements are honed to the millimetre. You expect to find on Queen Elizabeth II's plate a pheasant steeped in wine, or black caviar served upon an icy pedestal. Now, forget all that. Step into her private dining room on an ordinary Tuesday. The woman whose face was struck on the coins of half the world sits at the table. Before her, the most ordinary box of Kellogg's cornflakes. And here begins the first shocking truth. For decades, the Queen ate her breakfast not from silver bowls, but from yellow plastic Tupperware containers. She genuinely believed that an airtight lid was the only way to keep the flakes crisp. The greatest monarch in history was a devotee of kitchen plastic. Today, we shall tear the gilded tablecloth from the royal table and peer into the saucepans of ordinary British women. We shall learn why garlic became the empire's chief enemy, how jam pennies helped the Queen keep her sanity beneath the weight of power, and what mortal sin a chef could commit by serving her strawberries on the wrong day. This is the chronicle of two Britons, one that dined by protocol, and one that survived on ration books while discovering the world of tinned goods and fast food. If you also store your food in containers and now feel a little like a queen, give this video a like. Subscribe to Britain Yesterday, where we dissect British history without censorship or embellishment. The Coronation. The whole world is discussing a new, refined dish: coronation chicken. Chicken in a delicate curried sauce with apricots, a symbol of Elizabeth's bright new era. But let us look instead at the plate of the woman who watched that coronation on the first black and white television set of her life. For the ordinary British woman of the 1950s, coronation chicken was an unattainable luxury. Chicken was still considered a delicacy reserved for special occasions, not an everyday staple. While Elizabeth grew accustomed to French names on the menu, a palace tradition since the days of Queen Victoria, the average housewife was still queuing. Rationing of sugar and meat was not fully abolished until 1954. While the monarch tasted consommé and truffles at diplomatic receptions, Britain, below stairs, smelt of boiled cabbage and cheap dripping. It was a great gastronomic divide, the palace's neon-tinged future against the gray austerity of post-war domestic life. In the 1960s, Britain exploded with color and music, and shop shelves were flooded with food in tins. For the first time, the ordinary woman felt freedom. Ready-made meals appeared, along with Heinz condensed soups and the legendary Spam. To be modern meant opening a tin of peaches in syrup, the height of sophistication. Yet Elizabeth II made a shocking maneuver. She retreated into gastronomic conservatism. While her subjects embraced chemical sauces and instant Vesta curries, the Queen insisted that only seasonal produce appear on her table. She disliked tinned food as much as her people adored it. When the average British woman delighted in frozen peas from the supermarket, the Queen personally inspected the vegetable gardens at Sandringham. It was then that Elizabeth's curious habit took shape: eating her breakfast cereal from a plastic Tupperware container. It was her way of signaling, "I too am economical," while her people yearned for the indulgences denied to them for decades. The life of Elizabeth II is often portrayed as an endless tasting menu. The truth, however, is that her diet was a kind of protocol prison. There was a strict list of forbidden foods. Chief among them was garlic. At Buckingham Palace, it was not merely disliked, it was officially banished. The reason was prosaic. The Queen was constantly within whispering distance of world leaders. A monarch's breath had to be as sterile as the air in an operating theater. While the Queen sacrificed flavor to duty, the ordinary British woman of the 1960s and 70s experienced a gastronomic revolution. With the arrival of immigrants from India and Pakistan, the scent of curry and garlic began timidly to drift through the kitchens of working-class districts. For a simple housewife in Liverpool, the chance to add spices to a bland stew was an act of liberation. But the Queen had another fear: shellfish. She was strictly forbidden from eating oysters or mussels on foreign tours. The risk of food poisoning for a head of state was too high a price to pay for culinary pleasure. While the world savored seafood at official receptions, Elizabeth would melancholically chew an overdone steak. She was among the wealthiest people on earth who could not afford to risk a plate of pasta alle vongole. If any dish defined Elizabeth's essence, it was the jam pennies. Tiny sandwiches of white bread with butter and raspberry jam cut into the shape of an Old English penny. She ate them every day from the age of 5. They were not merely food, they were her psychological comfort zone, a link to childhood, when she did not yet know she would carry the crown for 70 years. At the same time, ordinary British women of the 1940s and 50s performed genuine miracles with scarcity. While the princess ate her neat little sandwiches, a mother in London tried to fashion cream from grated potatoes and a drop of fat because sugar and butter were issued by the ounce. It is striking that on the day of her coronation in 1953, Elizabeth tasted the famous coronation chicken while most of her subjects were still living by ration books. Poultry was then a luxury available only for grand occasions. The Queen became a symbol of hope for a well-fed future, though she herself remained an ascetic to the end of her life, detesting waste. It is said she might personally inspect the refrigerator and reprimand a chef for discarding yesterday's chicken. Elizabeth II was perhaps the strictest seasonal eater in the world. To attempt to serve her strawberries in January was tantamount to professional suicide for a chef. She was adamant. Strawberries are for summer at Balmoral. She ate only what was growing on her lands at that very moment. It was an almost puritanical code of honor, not to take from nature what it was not freely giving. Meanwhile, Britain below was intoxicated by progress. The 1960s and 70s became the era of frozen foods and tins. For the ordinary woman, being modern meant no longer standing at the cooker for hours, but buying a packet of bird's-eye frozen peas or a tin of peaches in syrup. It was a grand paradox. The Queen, possessing vast wealth, sought rustic naturalness, while her people aspired to industrial convenience, seeing preserved food as a mark of status and freedom from kitchen drudgery. While the average British woman rejoiced in condensed soup from a tin, the Queen demanded freshly caught trout from a Scottish stream. Yet even this iron lady had weaknesses bordering on obsession. Elizabeth II was a chocoholic. Her favorite chocolate biscuit cake was so important that it traveled behind her in a separate car whenever she moved from Buckingham Palace to Windsor. If a slice went missing, it was a scandal of near-state proportions. And while the Queen enjoyed her exclusive chocolate, the ordinary British woman of the 1970s endured the era of the 3-day week. Because of strikes and the energy crisis, electricity cuts were frequent. Meals were cooked on gas rings by candlelight. In those years, women drank liters of the cheapest instant coffee to keep warm in freezing houses. The Queen kept warm differently. Her daily ritual was a cocktail of gin and Dubonnet, with 2 cubes of ice and a slice of lemon. She drank it at precisely 11:30 in the morning. It was her small disinfection of reality. While ordinary British women embraced dieting and calorie counting under the influence of glossy magazines, the Queen ignored fashion, remaining loyal to her alcoholic aperitif and rich cream. The era of Margaret Thatcher brought microwave culture and the first McDonald's to Britain. The working woman of the 1980s no longer stood at the cooker for hours. She bought ready meals and fed her children nuggets. It was a period of complete capitulation of the domestic kitchen to the fast food industry. For Elizabeth II, that decade was a time of defending status. She strictly forbade any mention of fast food within palace walls. Yet the shocking truth leaked out. Her grandsons, William and Harry, adored burgers, and palace chefs sometimes had to adapt them to royal standards. Summing up this 70-year gastronomic duel, we see a striking picture. Elizabeth II, owner of estates, forests, and rivers, chose discipline. She ate cereal from plastic, crustless sandwiches, and denied herself garlic for the sake of duty to the crown. The British woman, by contrast, traveled from the hunger of 1940s rationing to absolute freedom of choice by the 2000s. She could eat burgers, oysters, garlic, and strawberries at any time of year. The shocking truth is that the ordinary subject was far more the queen of her own table than Elizabeth herself. The monarch ate to serve. The people lived, at last, to taste everything. So, who was happier at dinner? The one whose menu was written in French a week in advance? Or you, improvising in your own kitchen? Write in the comments which dish from this list you would dare to serve the Queen. Subscribe to Britain Yesterday so as not to miss our next investigation into how the British survived without the internet, sustained only by gossip and strong tea. Guard your taste buds, and see you in the past.